the recording here and kick things off as we get started. Yeah, so this is part of the Prepare for VC Startup Community and Event Series. I just put a link to our community page in the chat where you can find a variety of upcoming events, resources. You can connect with each other through the messaging, and we're actually we launched a health and wellness section, and we're launching a business skills and tools portal, and also run an accelerator program. So, our goal really at Prepare for VC is connecting founders and co-founders with the right resources at the right time to grow and scale their business. And that's everything from webinars and events like this to more one-on-one and group programs and content, and making sure, we know the startup journey isn't easy, and we want to provide all the right resources to help you grow and scale your business. So yeah, really excited. We connected, actually met Nelly through Clubhouse and a few other events we've been on together. And yeah, really excited for her presentation here today. From TechSpeak to digital woman, and everything, she does for the startup community. And I thought this was an amazing topic to start off on, is how to build an MVP without a technical co-founder or CTO. And yeah, really excited to kick off with this. And, we're probably going to plan a few more events in this series as we get going as well. But yeah, we'll keep it pretty interactive. Feel free to, communicate in the chat, share any thoughts as we go. And yeah, excited to hand it over to Nelly to kick off the presentation today.
Great. Thank you, Jason. It's so great to be here. And for those of you who are joining us live, I would love for you to participate in the chat, because as you know, I'm talking to a screen, and the only way I know that you guys are there and paying attention and resonating with what I'm saying and actually following along is by you communicating to me in the chat. So I'm going to be asking you prompts, and I'm doing all of these things to make sure that you guys engaged and are taking action, because I am very action oriented. I don't want you to just attend events and then forget about all the stuff you learned. I want you to put stuff into action. And so I'm going to ask you to commit to things. It's going to get exciting. And we'll get going. All right, so today I'm going to show you how you can make the shift from struggling to develop your MVPs and feeling uncertain on what you should be doing to successfully building an MVP in the next 3 to 4 months, so you can start to get traction for your product and attract a technical co-founder or CTO. We'll talk about a strategy. So very quickly, I can't know exactly why you showed up here today, but I bet I can guess. I work with a lot of early stage entrepreneurs, and let me know if you are resonating with one of the 3 reasons of why you showed up here today. The first is maybe you're a non-technical person with an amazing idea for a software business, but you've had a hard time finding a technical co-founder or CTO to help you build the product, or you thought about learning how to code so you can build your own MVP. But deep down inside, there is a much more efficient and faster way to get your ideas built. Or how about this? Reason number 3, you want to make the bold move into becoming a software entrepreneur, but you've had a fear about taking the leap, and you actually feel stuck because you don't know how to get started. So get in the comments and let me know, which one are you? What resonates with you the most? And by the way, it's okay to be one of the 3 buckets, or in all 3 buckets as well. And if you don't fall into a bucket, let me know that as well, because I want to know who's in the room and set the expectations properly. So jump in the chat, let me know, which one are you? Are you number 1, can't find a tech co-founder or CTO, don't want to learn how to code, or interested in a startup but don't know where to start? So we have Jason is a 2. Great. Ming is 1 and 2. All right. Anyone else who wants to jump in and let us know who you are? Joseph is bucket number 4, support Prepare for VC. Great. Excellent, Joseph. All right, so we'll keep moving. Make sure that if you are watching this afterwards, I want you to actually do the exercises and participate and write things down, because that's essentially how you can prepare your action plan for moving forward. All right, so very quickly, I want to talk a little bit about me, and so that you guys can know, like, I have a lot of experience in this space. I'm a CTO and a startup tech advisor and the creator of TechSpeak for Entrepreneurs, which is an online program where I teach the most effective and efficient ways to manage tech projects and teams, even if you're not technical or know how to code. And what's most important for you to know is that I have managed tech teams and projects for over 18 years, and I've refined and optimized my process over time. And I taught my TechSpeak 10-step process, which we're going to learn today, to over 1,200 students so far, and worked with hundreds of startups, helping them with their tech strategies and help them fix and optimize their processes. So I've got a question for you. Can you imagine what it would feel like if you could build your MVP successfully without waiting for Mr. or Mrs. Right tech person and finally start to get traction for your products? Think of how much money you can save and how much freedom you can have if you had the tools, the skills, and most importantly, the confidence to get your ideas developed and do it effectively without getting ripped off. Can I get a yes to that? And for those of you who are saying yes, this is exactly why I started teaching my process to non-technical founders, so that they can get their power back and be able to lead a team without being technical or knowing how to code. This is where we're going today. First, we're going to learn why it's so hard to find a technical co-founder or CTO. Then we're going to learn a strategy for building an MVP even without a technical co-founder. 2 money-saving skills you should know so that you don't build more than you need to. How to define your MVPs properly to reduce the cost and time of development. We're going to learn the importance of a good process. And I'm going to quickly share, for those of you who are interested, how to work with me, and then we'll go into the live Q&A. So as we go through the presentation, if there are any burning questions, like you don't understand what I'm saying, feel free to type in your questions into the chat. I'm going to try to address them. And Jason, if I miss it, just call it out. But I'm sure I'm going to address a lot of the questions in the presentation. And then, of course, we'll have time at the end to address any other lingering things. So tell me if you resonate with this scenario. You're a non-technical co-founder or founder who has an amazing idea, and whether you're there now or think of the first time you thought of your idea, did you immediately think that you need a technical partner, right? So a technical co-founder or CTO. You thought to yourself, having a co-founder will save me money because they'll work for equity. You also think to yourself, I don't have to worry about the tech side of the business and focus on marketing and sales, which is my strong suit. And so you start looking for one. And months go by and you have no luck. You even think to yourself, well, maybe I need to learn how to code. I don't know about you guys, but it took me years to become a proficient coder. And here's the problem with waiting. The problem is that the longer you wait, the big risk that you run is that you will miss the market opportunity. In the early days of your startup, finding a technical co-founder or a CTO is a very common problem. And that's why in my TechSpeak program, I teach my students that you don't find a technical co-founder or CTO, you earn one. Here's the thing, a good technical person who wants to take a risk and work in your startup is probably already busy doing a startup with their own idea. So you have to convince these other great technical people why they should take a risk on you and your idea by showing to them that you're not just an idea person, but that you can actually get stuff done, that you'll be able to deliver as the business person. These are the great technical people who are not already working on their own ideas. They don't have a problem earning a living in today's environment. In fact, there's a shortage of great developers, and companies are willing to pay top dollar to hire great talent. So on one hand, you have these risk-averse developers who have plenty of choices and opportunities and can make a lot of money working for other companies, established companies. And on the other hand, you have 2 out of 10 startups fail in their first year. So there's obviously a lot of risk involved. And one way to get the potential technical co-founder or CTO to say yes to you is by showing to them that you have taken some of the risk out of their time and opportunity cost investment. Here's some things that you can do to mitigate the tech person's risk and earn a technical co-founder or CTO. The first thing is to validate the idea and build a clickable prototype. This will demonstrate that there's a need and a demand for your product, that your idea is not just an idea. And as we'll find out in the second part of the presentation, these 2 things will actually require no technical expertise. So if you are a non-technical person who is just starting out, this is the first step that will completely shift things for you, as you'll find out. The second thing is to build a community and a following. This will further demonstrate the need for your idea and also show that you have the marketing skills necessary to sell the product. Again, that you're not just an idea person. And finally, invest some of your own money if necessary to build the MVP and outsource the building of the MVP. This will demonstrate that you believe in the potential of the idea, that you have skin in the game, and that you will find a way to bring your idea to life no matter what. And in the second part of the presentation, I will show you how you can plan your MVPs effectively. So this step should actually not cost you a lot of time or a lot of money. All right, but getting traction as a result of doing these 3 things will shift the conversation from I need you to come build my product to here's a great opportunity that you should be a part of. And you should feel lucky actually to be a part of it. You don't actually need to say that last bit, but it will definitely be inferred by whoever you're talking to. You'll be able to say, look what I've been able to achieve without you. Imagine what we can do together. And if you're here, type yes into the chat if you see the power of this conversation shift. It was such a, it's so much more effective as a sales pitch than anything else that you can do, right? Anytime you are positioning and pitching from a position of opportunity rather than need, that's where you want to be. Okay, so with this strategy, and we have Joseph says yes, and Jason and Meng, excellent. Thank you guys for participating. With this strategy, you're going to do 2 things in parallel. Okay, the first thing is you're going to de-risk the opportunity for the tech person by validating your idea, building the clickable prototype, and outsourcing the building of the MVP, with the whole goal is to gain traction for your idea. And while doing all of this, you will be actively looking for that technical co-founder or CTO by building your network of technical contacts. And hopefully by the time you meet them, you will have enough traction that the opportunity will be a no-brainer for the potential technical co-founder or CTO to say yes to you. And this approach is very effective because it allows you to showcase your commitment to the idea, showcase your skills and value as a non-technical founder, and also highlight and demonstrate that you are an amazing asset to the success of your company. This is a very, very important mental shift. And I want you to commit right now in the chat to make this mental shift of earning a technical co-founder. Okay, type I'm committed into the chat. And if you are going to watch this later, I want you to actually write this down on the piece of paper, because this is the action that I was talking about. I want you to start to take action every single day to making this a reality. Okay. So such a game changer for you that will happen. All right. And once you find someone, please, please, please do not make the mistake of saying yes too quickly. This is something that I see over and over and over again, especially with non-technical founders. I always equate finding a co-founder to dating. And just like you wouldn't ask someone that you just met to marry you, you shouldn't ask a person that you've just met at an event or somewhere else to become your co-founder. Way too many people say yes to a co-founder relationship too early. It's not just about finding someone who can complement your skill set. It's about finding someone who believes in the vision and how you want to actually grow your company. Someone that you're going to be able to solve really difficult problems with and get through challenging situations, which of course, as we know, startups are full of challenging situations. And you have to feel good about working with this person side by side for 5 to 7 or more years, right? What I'm describing is a true partner. So don't get a co-founder so you could put a check mark that you have one. It is the wrong approach and one that can literally cost you your company. The number one reason why a lot of startups never get off the ground or fail is because of a falling out between co-founders. Can you imagine that? Number one reason. So if you find someone compatible, figure out how you can work with with them on a project together. Maybe you pay them first and then you decide to make them a co-founder. And that's why earning a technical co-founder strategy that we just learned is so great. It will allow you to make progress while you're searching for a true partner, right? And actually take the time to build the relationship with someone. All right. So now let's shift gears and learn how you can build an MVP effectively and efficiently. Okay. The hard truth as a non-technical person without a technical co-founder or CTO, outsourcing the development of your MVP will actually be the fastest way to launch your idea, start to get traction, and also, as we just learned, to find a technical co-founder or CTO. All right, let's address the elephant in the room, which is outsourcing, right? You're probably thinking of 1 or 2 horror stories that you've heard about outsourcing. In fact, I personally rescued at least 25 projects in the last 3 years that my team and I took over from a bad outsourced situation. And I created TechSpeak for Entrepreneurs Academy after speaking to thousands of entrepreneurs in my workshops and seminars at conferences across the country and hearing the horror stories about their tech projects getting out of control. I mean, $60,000 and $80,000, even a startup who lost $100,000 of their seed round because they didn't know how to outsource. At first, I blamed the developers and agencies. And I could not understand how they could morally function like this or even stay in business. But the more I dug into it, the more I started realizing that the problem is not always with developers. Most often, it's actually the entrepreneur. Part of the problem for non-technical entrepreneurs is not knowing the process for building web and mobile applications, not knowing how to communicate their ideas so that their tech teams know exactly what to do, not knowing how to hire the right tech people, not knowing how to manage the project, trusting that the developers will take care of everything, and not knowing the right questions to ask to ensure that the right decisions are made for the business and that all of the technology decisions are aligned with business goals. And when you don't know any of these things, you will always make a lot of costly mistakes because you will miss a lot of the red flags, which are always there. But when you don't know what you don't know, you're obviously making a lot of these mistakes. So here, the issue is not that outsourcing doesn't work. The issue is that you may not know how to outsource properly. And the good news is that I can easily teach you how to do that. And that's what we're going to learn for the rest of the session. And what helps me be successful is having a really efficient process that I have refined over many years. And in a few minutes, we'll actually dive into the 3 key things in my process that allow me to manage teams successfully, whether they're in-house or outsourced or any combination of that, without wasting thousands of dollars. So first, let's learn what is a process and why it is so important. A process is a series of steps which, when followed diligently, give you the same result no matter who performs them. It is a repeatable way to produce consistent results over and over and over again. And it's important for companies because it allows you to get everyone to execute more efficiently and effectively. It will allow you to set expectations and also, most importantly, catch mistakes earlier. To me, the job of the founder is about minimizing mistakes. no matter how good your processes are. And today I'm going to share with you an amazing process. It's unrealistic that you won't make mistakes. I still make a lot of mistakes. The key is to catch them sooner, because the sooner you can catch mistakes, the sooner you can address them, which of course will minimize the effects of the mistakes. So now let's walk through the 3 secrets to outsourcing success using the TechSpeak 10-step process. Secret number 1, don't build more than you need. Because no matter how good your team is, whether they're in-house, outsourced, or any combination of that, you will always waste your time and money if you jump straight into coding without first refining the idea and then the solution, because you'll always end up building a lot of unnecessary features and functionalities that your customers won't end up using, which of course results in a lot of wasted development, which directly translates into wasted time and money. Validation, which is step 1 in my process, will help you refine your ideas to make sure that they are painkillers. And these ideas, doesn't matter whether it's a new product or a new feature for an existing product, every single idea in your startup should start with validation to make sure that that idea solves a painkiller problem. It's not enough to have good ideas. Your ideas must solve painkiller problems and not be a vitamin. Because if people just want what you're building but don't actually need it, you will always have a much harder time getting your customers to pay for your products and functionalities. And you would refine your idea through a process called customer development. Let me demonstrate how important and valuable customer development process is through an actual example. So here we have a non-technical entrepreneur who wanted to build a tech application around international news. Validation helped them identify their ideal customer for the service. And it actually wasn't who they originally thought it was going to be. It helped them understand how people felt about their riskiest assumptions and how to adjust those assumptions to directly address potential customer concerns, specifically how other solutions on the market failed to solve the problem they are trying to solve, what type of content they should create, what countries to focus on first, what the business model should be, and so much more. I can't even tell you. Without these details and insights, they would have had to build so much more functionality than necessary, targeted the wrong customer segment, and ultimately wasted a ton of money recoding later, because they would have eventually learned these insights, but only after the product was built. And a very, very important note, that customer development validation is not about putting together a few surveys or doing focus groups. To get these types of valuable insights, you have to follow a very detailed hypothesis testing process by conducting one-on-one interviews with your potential customers. My customer development process consists of 10 steps, and I have over 20 worksheets that I use and follow. So make sure that you don't take this step lightly. And I know, unfortunately, so many founders who read all of the books on customer validation, they know all of the terminology, but they either implement it incorrectly or frankly, they don't do it at all, because the books don't actually teach you the step-by-step for how to actually do it in a process, right? So your team knows exactly step-by-step how to do it, when to do it, etc. So you must focus on testing the right hypotheses. You need to design the interviews in a way that does not lead the user to your solution. In fact, I recommend that you forget about your solution in this validation step, and here's why. So I have a student who's going through my program right now. She was referred to me by a startup advisor who knows me, and she literally just told her, just do what Nelly says. And she came into the program with a prototype, and she says to me, Nelly, I don't need to do validation. I am a veteran in this industry, and I've been doing this for 20 years, and I know my market in and out, and I know that this is the solution that they need. But of course, I pushed her to do customer development. I said, forget about your solution and do some customer discovery interviews for a week or two. And if you discover something new, great. You can take those insights and directly bake them into your product before you build it, of course, saving you time and money. And if you don't discover anything new, also great, because that will give you some confidence that you're actually headed in the right direction. And of course, reluctantly she did. And she discovered one insight in her second interview, which then she continued to validate over the next 2 weeks, that completely changed the solution. She was still solving the same exact problem for the same exact market, but she learned that she needed to do it in a completely different way. And her initial solution was a part of that, right? But it wasn't this solution. And of course, that saved her so much time and money. And I know so many founders who spend years of their life trying to sell the solution that they think needs to exist, but it's not exactly what your customers' needs are. Okay. The cost of not validating always has cascading effects, first in the development stage and then in the sales and marketing stage. You will spend extra time and money at every single stage, possibly for features and functionalities that no one will ever use. So learn how to do this work properly, or maybe work with someone who knows the process. And this is another action point for you. I want you to commit to validating your ideas properly, so you know before developing anything that you build something that someone actually wants and needs. And this is such a crucial step, and it will actually inform every single product decision that you will need to make in the next 9 steps that we'll talk about. And I'm a techie here. I have resources. I can build anything I want. And I never, ever, ever move, whether it's a teeny weeny idea or a big idea for a new product, until I do validation. So commit in the chat. If you're watching this later, make sure you write this down on a piece of paper, because this is your next action step. All right? Great. Let's keep moving. So once you validate your idea, you'll need to refine the solution by first building an interactive prototype of the solution without writing any code. This is the clickable prototype. And then you'll refine that prototype by getting feedback from potential customers. And then it's an iterative process that you'll need to go through. So prototyping is step 2 in the TechSpeak process. And these prototypes are so realistic, your potential customers won't even know that they're not real. And I'd like to share a very quick demo of a recording.
Me using the prototype on my phone. As you can see, I can click on buttons and different elements, and it feels like I'm using a real app. We're simulating these interactions using prototyping tools. These tools allow us to easily define what elements will be clickable and what the user will see when they click on the hotspot. And all of this is done without writing any code. Looks pretty realistic, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? So let's talk about the benefits and how valuable prototyping is through an actual example. So this is a non-tech entrepreneur who's a student of mine. He wanted to build a tech application around politics. And prototyping helped them test multiple solutions before writing a line of code. The first 2 versions of their solution completely did not resonate with their users. And after collecting user feedback, they went back to the drawing board and got it right on the 3rd try. And if they had jumped into coding after creating their very first prototype, they would have had to re-architect their entire app later and rewrite a lot of the code. And that would have been very, very expensive. And by the way, writing code is a way of prototyping, but it is the most expensive way, right? That's why I want you to stay on the cheaper end of the prototyping with clickable prototypes, so that you can understand, remove all of the guesswork out of what the solution should be, refine it as much as you can, and then start to build. Okay. Remember, it is always cheaper to rapidly change prototypes than it is to rewrite code. And it actually gets even better. I'd like for you guys to meet Gabe. He's a student of mine, of course, and he was a realtor who saw a lot of inefficiencies in the real estate business. And he used validation and prototyping to come up with a solution to solve some of those inefficiencies. And he took his prototype to a real estate agency, the clickable prototype, right? It was not an actual working product. He took that to a real estate agency and was able to sign them on as a customer and actually got paid in advance to build it. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine what it would feel like to get your ideas paid for before you build, right? And you can do this with these two steps. In validation, you need to be able to find a painkiller idea and then come up with a solution that directly solves that problem. And of course, if you're targeting businesses who have budgets and really have a pain point high enough, they will be able to at least commit to some version of it and hopefully even prepay, right? So this is what I wanted to focus on. If you're just starting out, the first two steps, by the way, of this is earning a technical co-founder strategy that we learned about earlier. Do not require any technical knowledge at all. So if you're not a technical person, this is the first step that you're going to earn your technical co-founder. Find a big problem that you can solve that actually exists, and then start to build a clickable prototype. And you can do this very quickly, no coding required. All right, so I hear somebody actually keyboards clicking, and I don't know who that is. And so maybe you can mute your microphone. That would be great. All right, so let's keep moving. I think it's Joseph. Joseph, I see that you're unmuted, so maybe you can mute yourself. Okay, I don't know. Somebody's clicking. Great, awesome. All right, so let's keep moving. On to secret number 2. Define your MVPs properly by understanding what affects the cost of development. So once you have refined your idea and the solution, you're now ready to define, build, and deploy your solution. You now need to define a minimal viable version of the prototype that you created. So this is steps 3 to 7 in my process. And by definition, an MVP is the smallest number of features that you can launch with that will still provide some kind of value to your customers. But simply reducing the number of features that you launch with from, let's say, 20 to 4 is not enough. Let me show you why. Have you ever wondered how the same exact project can be estimated to be $10,000 and $100,000, and both estimates could be completely legitimate? Think about that. That's because the details of what and how you build something matter a lot. One of these details is knowing what affects the cost of development. And here's an example to illustrate this. What do you think will cost more to implement? This form where you collect user location in 4 fields, or this form where you ask the user to just enter the zip code and then the program will automatically show them their city and state? For those of you who are here live, enter your answer into the chat. What do you think will cost more to implement? Number 1 or number 2? Jason says 2. Joseph says 1. All right. Steve says 2. Carlos says 2. Great. So if you guess number 2, you are absolutely correct. In the second implementation, we have to write more code to get the user's city and state based on the specified zip code. It's from the user experience perspective, it's a much more elegant solution. But from a cost perspective, it is more expensive to implement. So you can intentionally decide to implement the cheaper version of the solution to save money, right? There is lots and lots of decisions like this that I call development cost reducing strategies that you can use to reduce the cost of your MVP. Again, the MVP is the minimal version of your product. It doesn't need to have all the bells and whistles, right? Using some of these cost reducing strategies that I teach, one of my students was able to reduce the cost of her MVP from an agency from $50,000 to 15, and more importantly, cut the development time from 4 months to 2. Can you imagine what it would feel like to get your project cost reduced from $50,000 to 15? Wouldn't that be amazing? All of you should be saying yes, absolutely. So the problem is, right? The problem here is that most developers and agencies won't tell you this, because the more you build, the more they get paid. So it's really, really important for you to know these cost reducing strategies as a non-technical person, so you can work with them and push them to help you reduce the cost of your MVP, and push back if they try to tell you it's not possible or this is the only way to do something. We need to use this shiny new technology to get started, and you're going to be able to scale to millions of users when you have 0 or 100, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. You need to start small and then iterate and refine from there. Okay, so before we go on to secret number 3, let me look at the questions. Joseph is saying, I'm not sure I understand your answer. Postal code is in both answer 1 and 2. Absolutely. But so here in that example, let's go back here. So here we're collecting user information, right? And here we are asking the user to provide city, state, postal code, and country in the first example. In the second example, we're just asking the user to enter the zip code, one input field, and we are using some kind of API in the backend to extract the city, state, and country without having them to enter all that information, right? So for the user, it's much easier because all they have to do is type in one thing instead of giving you 4 inputs. Okay, so that's the only thing that demonstrates. Excellent. Okay, great question. All right, so on to secret number 3, have an impeccable process based on lean and agile methodologies to manage your outsourcing team. So validating ideas and building a prototype, which is the first 2 steps, are a part of the lean product development process, but it goes so much more beyond that, right? The bigger picture behind the lean way of building products is this whole mindset of learn early, learn often, and learn cheap. A lot of development teams and outsourcing teams don't think about that, right? They don't think about how to cut development time and cost. It goes against how they make money, as we just learned. So it's going to be up to you to take this learn early, learn often, learn cheap philosophy and make it a part of your company culture, and have someone on your team to enforce the lean way of building products at every single step of your product development process, so that you can iterate a lot quicker. And in the third part of the presentation, we'll actually talk about specific details of how to work with agencies effectively. So that is coming. And Agile project management will allow you to get working code from developers in at most 2 weeks. Imagine that, getting working code in at most 2 weeks, and it can actually be weekly, daily, or even multiple times a day. The beauty of Agile project management is seeing the mistakes earlier and course correcting sooner. From my experience, there are a lot more agencies and developers who are familiar with these principles, Agile principles, and they claim to be practicing Agile, but who are woefully lacking in effective practices. And this is where I personally, as a fractional CTO, spend a lot of time when I go into startups and companies to help them fix and optimize their Agile practices, to help their teams execute much more efficiently, with the goal to optimize their current process so that their team performs like a well-oiled machine. And so a lot of this process is really to get you to uncover mistakes earlier. The shorter your sprints, the shorter your delivery timelines, the faster you're going to be able to catch mistakes. Remember that you can launch code in 2 weeks or as often as every single day. And it all depends on how good your process is and how well your team is executing. And the faster you are launching, the faster you are learning, which is what startups are all about. You need to be able to optimize your process for being able to learn quickly of what works, what doesn't work, so you're not going in the wrong direction for too long, okay? It's all about minimizing mistakes. To me, an efficient process is absolutely everything, because it actually creates the transparency throughout the project so you can detect earlier when things are headed in the wrong direction. And I want to demonstrate how important an efficient process is with this story. So this is Eric. He had his software startup for 3 years before he learned the TechSpeak process. He had a tech team, he had a CTO, and this is what he said after 3 years of running his software startup. He said after 3 years in business, TechSpeak would have saved us close to $500,000 in delays, development costs, and sleepless nights. That's the benefit of having an optimized process based on lean and agile methodologies. There is a difference between releasing code and releasing code effectively and efficiently. Lots and lots of developers are releasing code every day, launching new features and improving existing features for products. But if they're not using the latest methodologies in their processes, then I guarantee that they're wasting valuable time and money due to inefficiencies and miscommunications. And I want you to get into a habit of releasing code as often as you can, multiple times a day if you can, because that shortens your learning time. It gives you a lot more data points to make better decisions, and of course, allows you to catch mistakes earlier and course correct faster. Okay, now let's learn the 3 approaches to outsourcing development, and let's analyze each one and talk about their approach to process and how ultimately you need to work with agencies. Okay, so the first approach is to hire a local freelance developer. The advantage of working with a local freelance developer is that they're nearby, they work in your time zone, they speak the same language, they have the same cultural background as you. They're also a lot cheaper than an agency because they have very little overhead generally. It's usually just them, or maybe they have a partner. But from my perspective and experience, freelance developers don't have very good processes. Developers in general are trained only to write code mostly, and unfortunately are not trained in process and management. A lot of them hate process. They make it look like it's just going to add a lot of unnecessary back and forth, right? So just keep that in mind. The second approach is to hire a local agency, similar to the local freelancer. The benefits are the same time zone, same background, all of that. The agencies have bigger teams, and if one of their developers leaves, you actually won't be left in the lurch because they will be able to replace that for you. And that's, of course, is a big advantage. But their process in general will definitely be much better than a freelance developer, right? They will have some sort of a process. But again, not all agencies will follow a pure agile project management process, and they won't always be open to being transparent with you because, of course, the less transparency, the more money they can charge you. And most likely they don't have the lean part of the process. Very few agencies do. So that's something that's going to be important for you to actually think about. And agency prices will definitely reflect and be more expensive than freelance developers because they have higher overhead. And finally, the third approach is to offshore the development, okay, either to a freelance developer or an agency. Of course, this will be the cheapest option, but there are time zone and language barriers and cultural challenges that you need to think about. I personally offshore a lot, and I found that you can definitely do it successfully, but I find that in this case, a good process is even more paramount because most development shops are familiar with a very basic flavor of agile, and more, but you must insist on more because it's not very good, and almost none of them will have the lean part of the process. So before I actually tell you how to work with agencies effectively, let's commit and actually think about what is the right approach for you. Is it number 1, number 2, or number 3? Let me know in the chat. And for those of you who are watching this, think about this. Which would be the type of relationship with an agency that you would prefer? So Jason says 2, which is a local agency. Great. No matter what option you pick. So we have Patrick who says 3. Excellent. Offshoring is definitely a great thing for a lot of people to consider if you are able to do this right? So this is what you need to do. No matter what option you pick, you must have a product and a project manager on your end to manage the development team. Even though the agency may have their own project manager, you need to enforce your own process and manage the development team as though they were your team. I call this developer as a service arrangement, right? So you're basically using their developers, but you are considering them to be your developers. You're managing and using your own process. And otherwise, I found that it doesn't work. you have to be, if you don't do this way, you'll be be prepared to overpay, have a lot of inefficiencies, get a product that doesn't work because you're simply not there often enough to help make the quick decisions that are necessary, to see the red flags, right? We talked about, it's like a lot of people ask me, like, how do you hire an agency? Even if you get the glowing recommendation from someone, the developers that get assigned to you are not the developers who were working for your friend or whoever else, right? So your job is to be there to interact with your developers as though they're your own and manage them like they need to be managed, okay? Play the product manager role and understand the project manager role using lean and agile methodologies, right? So all the stuff that I taught you so far. And at the early days, right? In the early days, this job actually will fall to you because often you don't have the funds to hire a product manager or a project manager. And the last piece of the puzzle, if you're not technical, is to make sure that you're tech literate, right? You must become technically literate. I'm not telling you to become a developer, but I want you to become technically literate. What this means is that you'll need to learn the fundamental technical concepts. You'll need to know what some of the jargon means, and understand what some of the technical processes are, right? And understand how to easily identify when things are going wrong. You need to become knowledgeable about the web, how things work, what's behind the scenes, what happens when you click on a button on the browser, what happens on the back end, right? Like have an understanding of that, understand servers and how all of that communication happens. Learn about all the different programming languages and how they work together. Understand APIs and databases and libraries and frameworks and no code and low code, third-party tools, etc. Understand the high levels of what goes on behind the scenes of your product. And then you can set expectations in your mind and with your team on how things should work. And this will allow you to catch when someone is trying to take advantage of you or is giving you bad advice, which happens so often, even by well-meaning technical people. This is what will give you the confidence to have those conversations and ask the right questions. This will give you the confidence to push back when a developer says it can't be done or it can only be done a certain way. It will give you the confidence to control and negotiate how much time something should take and how much money it should cost. The confidence you get from being technically literate is literally going to change how other technical people perceive you. You're going to be able to attract better technical people just because you're able to communicate with them more effectively. Does that make sense? So I want you to commit right now, again, your last commitment for the day, to take steps to becoming technically literate. If you're in the chat, Steve says, Das, I like that, Nelly, absolutely. If type in the chat, I'm committed. If you are watching this live, write it down on a piece of paper. Make sure that you take steps to really understanding the technical landscape so that you can have much more effective conversations with your technical teams and be able to manage them. All right, so very quickly, before we get into the questions, let's recap what you've learned so far. You first learned that you have to earn a technical co-founder and not look for one. You learned that outsourcing may be the best way to actually find a technical co-founder. You learned to validate and prototype all of your ideas so you don't build more than you need. You learned that you should use development cost-reducing strategies when defining your MVPs to help reduce the cost and time of development. You learned that you should implement lean and agile processes to manage your teams and projects effectively, save time, and to deliver them on time and on budget. And you also learned that there's a difference between releasing code effectively and efficiently, and of course, to become more technically literate. And before we move on to the questions, let me know what has been the most valuable for you so far of all of these steps and strategies, the 1 through 7, all, or what combination of the 7. Steve says number 7, absolutely, so important. If you're not technically literate running a tech startup, that's not an option for you. This is an absolute mandate, okay? I'm mandating this. Joseph says, all. Carlos says 5, Jason says 3 and 7. Excellent. All right, so for those of you who want to continue to learn more about the process, feel free to join me at a live masterclass this Thursday or next Thursday, TechSpeak.co, prepare for VC. How to cut your product development costs by up to 50%. We'll actually dive into each of the 10 steps and we'll do the calculations for how much money you're leaving on the table if you don't do these 10 steps, okay? So feel free to join me there. And for a lot of you who want to learn what TechSpeak is, feel free to check out techspeak.co. And if you want to join me and actually learn the step-by-step for how to do it, I offered a 15% discount to the community. Prepare for VC 15 is the discount code. And so those are all the different options for you if you actually want to do the step-by-step and learn all of these things. All right, so with that, I will take questions. And since we're on Zoom and we have not a giant crowd, we can even do questions in real time if somebody wants to raise their hand and ask a question. Just unmute yourself and go for it. I can't hear any. I see Joseph unmuted. Joseph, did you have a question?
Yeah, Ms. Nelly, I just want to say thank you very much. This was a very, very interesting presentation. In fact, it was so good. I hope I can have your permission, and hopefully Jason as well. I want to pass this out to other people. It was that good. They really need to hear what you had to say and your thought process and how to say it. Because I have a few friends that's just starting out to build a, like you said, an app, and they, oh my God, they will love this. They would love to hear of your insights, and of course, maybe hopefully contact you in the future. I just, wow, this is an hour well spent. It really brightened it. I thought I had other opportunities today, but this was a really great presentation. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely. I see a question here from Jason. How technical should you go into developer or agency conversations with? For example, do you go into knowing you want to do developer with certain coding languages or platform, or explore with a developer? It's such a good question, Jason. You need to be able to know enough to be able to know what's a good question to ask, right? Because obviously, building your technical literacy is going to be an ongoing process. Technology changes at the speed of light, and there's new things always, constantly. And what I find is oftentimes a lot of entrepreneurs don't even know what to ask or when to ask the question. So it's like you're going to a mechanic without knowing anything about cars. If you don't know what they're saying to you, you always will agree to pay what they ask you to pay and to fix what they're asking you to fix, right? Or to build in this case. So the key here is to knowing how to ask the right questions. And if you don't understand, be brave enough, actually, right? That this is the confidence that I'm talking about. A lot of people don't feel confident to feel like they're allowed to ask questions. And this is like something that I want a lot of my founders that I end up working with at TechSpeak to really get through, because you don't need to know too much. That's why you have your technical developers who have a lot of the skill set, and you need to just know how to ask the right questions and get the confidence that what they're telling you is actually the right advice. For example, some of the people that I ended up working with, their developers recommended .NET as the programming language. Of course, the non-technical entrepreneur didn't know that or they should have known that in the US, nobody uses .NET, and very hard to find inexpensive freelance developers using that programming language. So if they knew the landscape, right, of what types of programming languages are being used in general, they would have had the foresight and said, well, this doesn't sound like what we should be using. And the only reason why .NET was recommended is because the developer wanted to play around with that, and that's all they knew, right? It wasn't necessarily recommended because it was the best choice. And so sometimes I tell my founders to continue to ask questions until and make sure that the answer sounds right, right? Because sometimes if they just tell you, well, that's just because I said, there's a red flag for you, right? And I'll share an example also. When I used to teach TechSpeak, when I first launched TechSpeak, it used to be an in-person boot camp. I would teach over a weekend, and we were going through the technical session at TechSpeak, and this entrepreneur was, by the way, was crazy about her CTO prior to that. She just was in love with him and all that. And so as she was in the session, she started asking him questions. Oh, by the way, why did we make this decision? Or what did we make a decision on this about? And guess what? 2 months after this whole thing, their entire relationship fell apart, simply because she started discovering things that he was covering up. Because she didn't know what to ask, there was not a lot of transparency, and he was able to hide a lot of these things. But when she started asking the questions, that's when things fell apart, right? And that's the power of, as a non-technical person, knowing a little bit. And then that also gives you not only the confidence, but also the ability to continue to ask the right questions. So hopefully that answered your question, Jason. Let's see if there's any other questions. Great. If you find a great team of developers and love working with them, pretty much become a part of their team. How important is a tech co-founder? Patrick, it's a great question. So I always tell founders that don't rush into the technical co-founder relationship, because once, and this happened with a lot of my students, because at TechSpeak, I teach you all the 3 things that I am advocating for here, right? Everything I teach you, by the way, comes from a lot of the experience of like working with founders and seeing what works, right? At TechSpeak, I will teach you how to be the product manager, how to be the project manager, and how to get enough tech literacy to actually, start to build your base from. And a lot of my students realize that, hey, I can manage a team. Why do I need a technical partner, right? And so they just get someone senior who can lead the product, and they continue to manage a team. At some point, they may actually replace and hire a product manager and project manager. At some point, you will need to do that, right? But you start to realize that you have the power to determine how much of your company you want to give away, because a co-founder, 50% most likely, right? If there's 2 or 3 co-founders, a little bit less, but you're giving away a big chunk of your company because they are a partner. But when you bring on a technical leader, I don't recommend giving them the title of the CTO, right? Because in the beginning, you actually need a developer. There's a YouTube video that you guys can check out, the 6 qualities that a CTO should have. And a lot of people give the title of a CTO way too soon, because you don't actually need a CTO in the beginning. You need a developer, someone who can help you build the product, right? So that's the power of realization that you will at some point may make. There's definitely a benefit to the partner, and we talk about all of that. But you may decide that, hey, if I can find someone who can be a CTO or a technical lead, and I give them a percentage of my company, but a much smaller percentage, you can then have a lot more power in how you structure your team. So it's not definitely not a requirement to have a technical co-founder at that point. Carlos is asking, which tool do you recommend to build a prototype without code? So we have 2 different types of prototype that we talked about today, right? A clickable prototype, and then we have an MVP. So for a clickable prototype, at TechSpeak, I use a tool called Adobe XD, and very similar tools are Sketch and Figma and InVision. All of these tools are almost identical, right? So just pick any tool that you want, or maybe some, if you already have designers that use any specific tools, because what happened in the last few months or years is that designers are now abandoning Photoshop and they're going straight into these tools. And now these tools have thousands of different features and functionalities and bells and whistles that a lot of them are necessary, like become almost impossible to learn really quickly. So what I did at TechSpeak is I said, these are the 10 steps, 10 things you need. This is some shortcuts and ideation mechanisms that like a lot of my students can finish a prototype really quickly because I just give them the things that they need to understand. So the tools don't actually matter. It's the process around it that you build. Okay. Lots of, as I mentioned, options that are out there, but just start using them and learning them. That's going to be the fastest path. There was some other question. Did I miss a question, Jason?
No, the other question from earlier was also around the
Okay.
prototyping recommendations. So yeah, I
Okay.
think you got them all there.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Doesn't look like there are questions. Excellent. So
Oh, this is great.
awesome. I'm so glad that you guys could join me. Patrick says, would you ever give equity? Equity to the development team? Oh, yes. So that's a good question. I think you should consider giving equity not at the beginning. Okay. If you're committing to giving, and this is something that comes up a lot of people say, well, I have an agency who is going to build this MVP for equity, 10% of my company. And this is what happens. This is the reason why it never works. Number one, you have no way of knowing and understanding if this development shop is going to give you the right deliverable, if they're going to be a good team for you to work with, right? And now you're stuck to them with equity. It's just too early, right? I've seen this work where founders have worked with a team, they've seen that they go above and beyond, and they're not just an outsourcing agency, right? They act more like a partner. Eventually, they may decide that they want to give them equity just to say thank you, right? And it's never, to me, the other way, it's never worked out. It's just there's too many risks, too many unknowns, and you don't even know what you're giving away 10% of your company for. The other thing is that they'll inflate your costs simply because they'll need to justify 10% of your company. So if in the reality you can build something for, let's say, 20 to 30 to 50K, they're going to say it's going to cost you 250K, right? Just to say, well, it's worth 10% of the company. I just think that it's never worked in real life, and I wouldn't do it at the beginning. If you like your agency, if it works out, then at some point you might consider that. Great. Excellent, Patrick. All right. So if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. I am part of the startup community and play very deeply in it. So definitely reach out to me, attend some of the workshops. And if you feel like TechSpeak is the right avenue for you, check it out as well.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thanks, Nelly. That was a great presentation. Thanks for everyone that came out. So yeah, we'll share the recording in our community platform, and yeah, Nelly's on there too. Feel free to send her a message or check out the yeah, I'm happy to pass along this link to the techspeak.co/prepare for VC webinars. And yeah, really excited about those upcoming events and everything you offer to the startup community here.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. Have a great afternoon. We'll talk to you soon. All right.